This is Off Peak, the podcast about getting around in Los Angeles, and I'm Neely Alel. Summer belongs to kids. There's no school, long, hot days, and here in Southern California, if you're lucky, you get to go to the beach. But as all of us can remember, just getting where you want to go as a kid can be a major pain. In the summer of 1969, when bus service wasn't that extensive, for kids who couldn't get a ride to the beach, they hitchhiked. One kid saw all those thumbs as an opportunity.
1969 was the year. I'd been 17, and we'd all hitchhike up and down Beach Boulevard. It was 21.3 miles from Whittier Boulevard to Huntington Beach. So all the school kids would go out there. The girls would get picked up that quick, instantly. And the guys would have to wait and wait and wait.
Mike Kadlitz was a senior at Sonora High School in La Habra, a neighborhood just north of Disneyland. Not a beach town, but close enough that the kids there could almost taste it.
So that's when I came up with the idea of starting the bus company, picking up all these kids and charging them, thinking that I could just buy a bus and go.
Sure, of course. Enterprising kid. Why not start a bus line?
Found out you needed a permit from the PUC, Public Utilities Commission.
The Public Utilities Commission regulates all sorts of privately owned utilities: electric, gas, water, railroads, and buses. It's a giant bureaucracy. It's basically there to discourage fly-by-night operations. But Mike found a kind of guardian angel there.
Lloyd Young was the guy's name that worked at the PUC that I first talked to. And if he would have told me all the BS I had to go through, I would never have done it. He said, just do this and come back and see me. Just do this, come back and see me. But he did it in piecemeal. He was kind of a smart guy. He said, well, first, bring me a map of the route you want to do.
Mike's aims were modest. He wanted to run a bus up and down Beach Boulevard. One street, straight line.
And I brought that to him and says, tell me what you think you'd charge.
At first, Mike wanted to charge 60 cents a ride, but the PUC convinced him that to cover all the insurance costs, the fare had to be at least double, $1.20.
And he said, now go to each city council and get approval from them to see if they'll allow you to run a bus through there.
His 21.3 miles ran through 9 city council districts. Mike needed to get approval from all of them. And conveniently for him, city council meetings were in the evening because he was still going to high school.
I just got on their agenda, made my presentation. I'm going to run the bus on this route, this time schedule, and charge you this much. Is that okay by you guys? At that time, I was 17 years old and I had sandals and a mustache and all that happy horse stuff. And they all said, okay.
So, routes check, fares check, city council approvals 1 through 9, check. The last thing Mike had to do was to send a letter to nearby bus operators to make sure he wouldn't be competing with them. That should be easy. If there was a bus already running a service like this, everyone would be taking it instead of hitchhiking.
No matter what the weather. As Steve Allen says, it's such a comfort to take the bus.
And leave the driving to us.
Relaxing while we're riding in a
Greyhound responded appealing my service, saying that they were competing with me because you could catch a bus in Anaheim and take it to L.A. and transfer from L.A. and take it down Pacific Coast Highway.
That route would be at least 60 miles and probably take more than 2 hours on a bus.
So then I had some hearings with Greyhound.
Just to interrupt here, 18-year-old Mike is defending his startup, and that was not even a word back then because kids did not start companies, by a challenge from Greyhound. Leave the driving to us, Greyhound.
And they ruled in my favor. And then when Lloyd called me and says, well, it looks like you're going to get the permits. You need to get the buses and get them inspected.
So after that hiccup with the appeal, the 28-page application was approved. Mike had his best friend's mom help him type it all up. At that point, he was the youngest person ever to get a permit from the PUC. Mike now had 20 days to get the buses running before his permit expired.
I had to find 2 buses, and then I met Dave Carson, American International Bus Exchange. I bought my first 2 buses from him. They were 1938 Transits. And he was kind of excited about the project, and his son was the same year as I was. And he's out there washing the buses, and I became great friends with his son, Dean.
To pay for the buses, Mike got his brother Paul to be a partner in the operation. They used money saved from working their supermarket jobs. They bought $26 worth of house paint and rented a compressor. They sprayed the buses a screaming neon pink, a color that probably has never been seen on a bus before or since. There was one last hitch. Neither Mike nor his brother Paul were actually old enough to drive a bus. They had to find a driver, 2 of them. Their first hire was a long-haired, 29-year-old Vietnam vet turned hippie named Jerry Ming. Finally, on June 22nd or 25th, depending on which newspaper article you believe, the pink bus line rolled.
First day, first stop, 225 kids standing there. And I had 21 more miles to go.
Mike's buses seated 45.
And then after the first stop, and we had such a huge crowd, then I panicked, called my bus guy up, said, hey, we need some more buses. So we ended up buying 2 more, and then it just was a pretty good, lucrative gig.
That's a bit of an understatement. Kids loved the new line. It was all over the local papers. Parents were telling their teenagers about the pink line to get them out of their hair all summer. After just a couple months, Mike got a call from Motorola. They were in the sound system business back then. They donated the latest quadraphonic speakers for all the buses. Of course, they asked for some advertising in return. They put up banners in the buses that read, "This bus is a hearing aid and ear freaks inside." It was not a quiet ride to the beach.
So it would have been the Beach Boys and Dick Dale and the Deltone, Surfing Safari, I think it was Jan and Dean. A lot of surf music back then. Great stuff, great stuff.
It was like your own little Woodstock kind of a thing. The music was definitely cool. So you were young, it was neon pink, and there was rock and roll music playing. That was kind of a party on the way to the beach. It felt really neat.
We went to the beach a lot. We'd be in our cutoffs and a t-shirt and sandals and take our towel, and we would go for the day.
Mary Gleason and her brother Gene were 15 and 16 and rode the pink line all summer.
Because this was the freedom. This was the way to get to the beach when you couldn't, because mom had young kids and wouldn't take you. You didn't want to go with mom.
We just waited, and I don't remember ever waiting real long. We'd just go, and then we'd just wait, because we knew it'd come.
Stood on Beach Boulevard, neon pink buses approach. You hailed the bus and took you to the beach. That was about as much scheduling as was involved. It was young kids that didn't have a license yet. So there were, 10 and 12-year-olds there too. It wasn't all 15 and 16-year-old kids. So some, they had younger brothers and sisters with them kind of a thing. So, on Beach Boulevard, it was radically different back then. There were strawberry fields and open fields, very kickback, low-key. I mean, you'd fly down Beach Boulevard.
But it was the 2 o'clock bus in Huntington Beach. You come over a little rise when you're about 2 or 3 miles from the beach, Huntington, and you'd see the crowd start to grow. It was like an ant farm or something. First you'd see a few people stand there, and then as you got closer, crowds would be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There'd be 300-400 kids waiting for their 2 o'clock bus, and some would know, we'll get the 3 o'clock bus. Then I was running 2 buses at a time, 2 at 2 o'clock, 2 at 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
The Associated Press ran a feature piece about the pink line by a gonzo journalist named Jay Sharbut. It was syndicated in papers all over the country. "His bus is pink," Jay wrote. "Not a nice, quiet pink, but a violent, eye-arresting pink, topped with white. It's no place for a man with a hangover." Man, even the AP was cool in the 70s. Back before cities took over transit, there were actually quite a few bus lines started by entrepreneurs. There was Dr. Thomas Matthews' Blue and White. He started that in Watts in the late 60s. The area was totally underserved by transit, and it may have been the only bus line started by an African American. There was another renegade line up in Malibu, too, when Malibu was truly the sticks.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Pocket full of cash. Oh, man, I'm a punk kid and I got pockets full of cash. How cool was that?
What did you do with the money?
I don't know. You think the gals liked me? Yeah, that was fun.
Jean and Mary had no idea that this was all the brainchild of a fellow teenager.
It looks like it was the modern-day Steve Jobs story, huh? I found a niche, young kid, read the tea leaves, what a country, and came up with this great little enterprise. That's pretty sophisticated for back then, because that wasn't something, people didn't start businesses as teenagers back then, for God's sake.
Now, it didn't quite turn out to be a Steve Jobs story. Starting and then maintaining your own bus line, even in 1969, is really tough. The Orange County Transportation Authority, what became the dominant municipal bus line in Mike's region, was started in 1972, just a year after the Pink Line. And in 1973, they wanted to run a bus down neighboring Harbor Boulevard. This time, it was Mike's turn to appeal. Lawsuits and hearings ensued. Eventually, the two groups settled and the Pink bus line started operating the harbor route themselves. And they did it with Mike's customary flair. Painted on the nose of these buses was a big yellow sun dipping into the waves. Its destination sign read, Beach Buggy. There were some other issues. The weekday ridership basically ended after school started, and Mike had these buses now and insurance he was carrying. So he started runs to Disneyland, shuttle buses for college students, charter buses to resorts. He even bought 10 more buses to operate a commuter line. He had graduated high school by now. He had an office. Mike was becoming an honest-to-God transit guy, but he was still living at home.
My dad answers the phone. Mike, there's a telephone call for you. So I pick up the phone. Hi, my name's Howard. I'm wondering if you can come by my house and have lunch and talk about your business. When I get off the phone, my dad says, he's probably the richest guy in California, if not the Western U.S.
Howard Amison Jr. is the heir to the Home Savings Bank fortune. You might have heard of the Amison Theater in downtown L.A. He reached out to Mike because he was interested in transit and looking for a business opportunity. He ended up buying Paul's share of the business, so he and Mike were partners for a while. Later on, Howard bought Mike out of the Pink Line itself and then sold it to another company. The bus business is not for sensitive types.
I could never be a bus operator now because there's just too much baggage to go on top of operating a bus. It's unbelievable. I couldn't comply. Not many people could. Back then it was, if you have insurance, you have licensed drivers, and you get permission for the route, that's it.
Nowadays, Mike is still in the bus biz. He ran a bus conversion operation. He took plain old buses and souped them up into luxury motorhomes, like with jacuzzis. And he owns an underground, literally underground, tourist attraction in Arizona called Grand Canyon Caverns. For $1,000, you can spend the night 220 feet below ground. It's worth a Google.
No, I've always been a hustler. I was kind of entrepreneur. I've been self-employed ever since.
The kids who got to ride the Pink bus line those few summers must have been the luckiest kids alive. Nowadays, the number 29 OCTA bus runs down Beach Boulevard. It's a regular bus. It's got a fare box. Pretty sure there's no quadraphonic speakers. Something as cool and different as the Pink Line could never last. It's like childhood or summer or the 60s, a kind of mythical, magical moment that ages out, gets corrupted, co-opted, or maybe it's always best as a memory. Join us next time when we get a front row seat to the Olympics of bus driving. It's going to be awesome. If you enjoyed this episode, like us on iTunes and tell your friends. You can email us with your feedback about the podcast and story ideas to offpeak@metro.net. This episode of Off Peak was produced by me, Nelia Lell, and The Glue. We had help from Annie Chelsea. It was edited by Jim Gates, engineered by Ravi Carmen, with production management by Rachel Harper for Metro. And the bitchin' music in this episode was created by Sun Little, whose self-titled album is available at sunlittlemusic.net. Special thanks to Charles P. Hobbs for his amazing book, Hidden History of Transportation in Los Angeles. If you like stories like this one, you will love his book. This is Off Peak.